Lynn.
I'm Amanda.
And this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. We're cutting through the fluff and cracking open what it really takes to build a business and life that you actually want.
No gurus, no gatekeeping, just real talk, big action, and the badass energy you need to scale and slay.
Some episodes, it's just us.
And sometimes we bring on powerful guests with stories that will hit home.
Either way, this is not about playing small.
It's about going all in.
Let's get after it. Hey there, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. Baby, it is cold out there, depending on where you are in the world. And today we're talking about turning cold leads into clients. Cold leads aren't necessarily cold. They're just nurtured, underqualified, and uninvited. And we're going to change that today.
When we decided to do this podcast, all I could think about, and I know we've talked about this because we both had our own like tickler system, kind of like that filing. And like, I can remember Flau asking people, is it a no forever? Or is it a no now? Right. And so like putting them back into my filing system to like reach out to them later. And obviously we had some contact, but to us, that's what a cold lead is. It's like somebody that you've already had kind of a little bit of contact with, and you're reintroducing them back in because it's a lead, right? At least in my opinion. I mean, you might have a difference. It's not like a new prospect. It's a lead that has went cold.
Yes, I agree. And I think that we want to make the distinction because a lot of times people see cold outreach as like automation, just throwing things out into the world and hoping somebody reaches back out to you. As in cold, as in they've never contacted you. They never tried to contact you. You're just spamming them. And that's not what we're talking about in this instance. We're not talking about this sort of automation, killing authenticity, vomiting at people and hoping that somebody is interested. That's not what our context is today. We're talking more about people, again, as Lynn said, that you've had a contact, but they fell off the wagon. They lost interest. You never followed up, like whatever that looks like. And that's how we're going to be leading into this nurturing strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would start by thinking of, and actually I just did this with a client. It's like, go through, this is an easy place to start to kind of get the ball rolling. Go through all the leads that you've had in the past year. And if you haven't had that many, there's another problem, just FYI. But let's say go through all the leads that you've had in last year. The last year is probably the easiest. You can go back 3 years if you want to, but and rate them, how far you got with them, and kind of where almost create like a concentric circles, if you would. So these were super close, these were kind of close, and these were in the outskirts, if you would, by the trust that you built, by the conversations that you had. And this is just a guess. But this kind of gives you a picture of where you think people are. And why this is important is because we want you to start from the inside out, right? Because the ball can get rolling if you had more trust already built, if you had more conversations, if you have more context to kind of lean into. This gives you the ability to be able to start from here versus starting from here, right? With this, it doesn't mean that that person's going to close better. And we're not saying leave the outside outliers to nothing, but there's a different strategy and different time input, especially if you have 100 leads that had went cold. It's hard to follow up with 100 leads in a day, right? And to do this in a day, especially in a sincere way, and be able to not just spam them like Amanda was talking about. So to me, that's where you would start, is kind of rank them or put them in a concentric circle in a way where you can be a bit more specific about your point of attack.
Absolutely. I mean, think about leading with context. I mean, if you haven't spoken to them in a year and you're reaching back out, it's going to be very different than a cold lead that you spoke to last month. So think about the length of time. Like, you want to show relevance really quickly, because the fastest way to really convert a cold lead is like to think about your messaging speaking directly to the current problem that they have. How long ago was it that you spoke to them? Their problems might have changed. If you haven't spoken to them in, for example, 3 years, their problems are probably not the same as they were the last time you spoke to them. And if they are, well, then you can attack them from the standpoint of like they understand the cost of staying stuck because they've been stuck for 3 years. So that's a different type of messaging. But the same thing, it's when you're thinking about converting those cold leads, think about the context around them. Think about how long it's been, what problem they had at the time, and then hitting them back up again and seeing, is this the same problem you're dealing with? If you're still dealing with this problem, like what's the path forward? What's the path that feels safe and customized to you? And understanding that cost of staying stuck. And then again, adjusting your messaging so that it's directly going to address their current problem, which might have shifted. It might have shifted to the point where you're no longer the answer, but we're going to assume that maybe they are adjacent, or maybe they need a different product that you have. Or maybe if you think about, like if you're thinking of, for example, phone plans, let me just go for phone plans. They were reaching out to you when they didn't have kids, and now their phone plan, like they still need a phone, but now they need a phone that has a family plan. So it's still like, where's the adjacent line as their problem has shifted? But you need to think about those, converting those leads with context and with relevance, because that's what's going to convert them ultimately. They're not going to, like, you have to kind of build trust with these micro touch points rather than, you know, like I said, vomiting all over them with everything that you could possibly do to fix their problems.
Yeah. Yeah. You touched on so many different points that were so good. I want to go over a couple of them with just a slightly different angle. Think, and you said this, I love context. We could talk so much. We could do a whole podcast around context in different ways. We should.
Well, maybe we will.
Yeah. So you exactly said it. And most of us, I'll go from this side. Most of us will check in. I'm just checking in to see how things are going. I'm just checking in to see if you've made a decision. I'm following up instead of re-entering or going back to them in context. And that can mean many different things. But like you said, the original problem, it could be an adjacent thing. It could be something else. So that context is super important. Also, the timing triggers, which is also context. And I love this. I always have. I don't know. My brain has always worked this way, is what's the opportunity in front of us? And so it's the new year. Okay, so we have a new year opportunity. You see something that, you know, maybe this person's an avid golfer. There's the golf tournament. There's an opportunity to have that retouched with context, right? There is a reason behind it. I think that that's the other context too, is if you're going to do this and apply this, you have to believe that you're trying to push them through your sales processes. So if you don't have that envisioned, you're less likely to do it. But the timing triggers, but the opportunity, what opportunity is in front of you that gives you a bit more weight? And then also, if you want different results, you have to do things differently. So if you approach them always the same, in the same tonality, in the same words, it's this pattern that you're creating with them. And essentially, the message is failing. So it could not be the timing. It could be that you're just using the same old verbiage, the same old shit, the same old frequency, and you are not following up with the bigger picture in mind, the end result in mind, and with some persuasion. Persuasion is not a bad word in business. Like, it's part of it. So that persuasion to get them to say, hey, now's the time.
Yes, absolutely. And there are a lot of mistakes that entrepreneurs make. I mean, timing is, I think about timing. I always think about, like, you're asking for the sale too soon. You're not qualifying. Like, then you get, assumed silence equals no. And then you're assuming they don't want something. And there's a lot of timing that's involved in the mistakes that most entrepreneurs make when they're reaching out to cold calls, is that they're all messed up on their timing because they don't really know how to sell to somebody that they haven't really built. There's not enough curiosity there. There's not enough relevance. There's not enough relationship. And so that's why they're not seeing any conversion, because they've just gone from like cold to give me your money, rather than, sparking that curiosity and working on the timing to make sure it's relevant for what they're doing, make sure that you're building a relationship that's strong enough that asking for the sale doesn't feel weird. And that's when people start feeling salesy, because you know the difference when you get on the phone and you're just like, give me your money. It feels very different than if you have a relationship and you have the idea of, I'm going to solve this problem. I know we haven't spoken in 6 months, but now I have a solution for the problem. Is this still a problem that you're dealing with? Because last time we talked, it was. And creating like a message sequence of that explains the clarity and ultimately gets permission to ask for the sale. And I think that's it's really hard sometimes to understand that timing, but I will say that it's not going to come magically. It's not something most people are not born with this skill of like, I know exactly when to call someone back and I know when to follow up. This is a learned skill and it comes with practice and doing it over and over and over again. And the more you reach out to those leads, because I mean, we've said this 1,000,000,000 times before, that most of the sales are lost because there's no follow-up. People never follow up. And so these cold calls, you're leaving so much money on the table because they're used to people not following up. So if you can be the one to follow up and follow up in the right way, there is untapped potential there for revenue and for relationships.
Yeah. I mean, I've written about it. I've spoke about it a cajillion times, but the whole reason why we picked the real estate agent that we picked to sell our home in Hawaii was because and over a good friend, it's because she followed up. And even though it was later, she still followed up. And I thought, I want that piece of, that part in my sales cycle of my own personal home. You said something, and then I also want to go to another point as well about messaging. And it reminded me of something that you do really well, is that because it doesn't happen by happenstance, is that are you paying attention to these cold leads, especially for those of us that are online? And so Amanda does this really well. And she has a whole process that she's taught us and the team to be more rigid in, is that she will see, and you can talk more about this, but she will watch the cold leads and see what they post about or see what they like and whatnot. And then she'll post content based on that. Talk a little bit about that, because I don't want to talk, because it really is your process that you've taught us.
Yes, and it seems very creepy, and I 100% acknowledge that I might have missed my calling as a spy or as, a stalker. But when it comes down to it, is if I see somebody, they're a cold lead, they've dropped in, they've made comments on some of my stuff, they've reached out maybe once, I will absolutely follow them on social media. I will check in with them periodically. It's not like I'm creepily following their lives. I don't have time for that. But what I do have time for is to check in to see, are they still posting about the same problem? Are they still liking the same types of content that I post? And if they are consistently, I'm going to post more of that content if they seem like the ideal person. This isn't something I do for every single person who ever, likes anything I do, but I'm going to curate it based on my ideal clients. So I might post something that is directly related to them, or maybe, and I did this just recently, I'm going to use visuals that are like their brand. So they're going to visually see their brand in my content. I'm like, oh, wow, she's kind of talking to me. I'm absolutely talking to that person, because that's how you nurture. I mean, this is one of the ways that I nurture on the back end, these cold leads, and they see that my content is speaking to them. It's because I am seeing what they're saying. I'm listening to what their problems are. I'm tailoring my content to them specifically. And I am, following up, or maybe I'll even randomly send them something. Oh my gosh, this reminded me of something that they posted. And they're not my friends. I mean, it's not like, how you send your friends like 1,000 memes, but I will also do that to complete strangers that I've met on the internet, based on some random bit of conversation that we've had, because it's building a relationship. And this is a long game. Sometimes it pays off pretty quickly, but sometimes it's like 2 years later that they might come in and then they're suddenly paying clients. And I know that seems like a very long game, but they're cold leads, and people are at different stages of wanting to need services. And my stuff's a little more high ticket, so it's kind of worth the wait. And if once they're ready, they're ready. And it's a much easier conversation, and it's much less work on my end. And I know that seems like, for a lot of people, that seems like a lot of work, but it's, it takes me minutes a week to go through it and to make those meaningful connections. Minutes.
It's depositing into the back-ended relationship, we'll say, because you're paying attention, you're making comments on their post, you're following them. So many people don't engage, you're engaging essentially. And I will say this too, also, and Amanda didn't state this, is that the content that she's pasting, or we'll say redirecting, is content that she's good at. Like, this is what she talks about. This is what she trains about. This is what she coaches and consults about. Like, it's not, she's making shit up just to like get this person. It's absolutely in context of her own business. Otherwise she wouldn't be doing it. And it is a psychological thing, which is what we teach around and consult around as well, is like, how to build those relationships. But at the end of the day, Amanda is being proactively engaged on her social media in an intentional way, which is beautiful. And if you've listened to us before, you know that intentional, proactive, and engagement are three huge things in our world, like we talk about all the time. And we cannot, I mean, that's one of the relationship builders, is sending articles or doing, like you said, memes or different things. Like, that is such a relationship builder that we forget about.
I think it's important just to note, it's not about having like 500 million people that I'm trying to reach out to.
No.
I don't need a huge list. I need a small curated list. So it's not about getting the most engagement so I can go viral, so I have 100,000 subscribers. I don't care about that at all. It's more about, are the people who are listening to me people who actually care what I have to say? Because those are the real people that I want to talk to.
Yeah. And Amanda does do a lot of her, we'll say, lead generation and farming online. It's, sometimes it's in person, but she does a lot online too. But we've seen this with people who do a lot of like networking events, like in-person networking events, although Amanda's starting to do more again. And if you listen to us, she's more of the introvert versus both. But that we've seen when a couple of our clients have implemented this, and like, it's a night and day difference, because you're going to post anyway. And it almost becomes not a residual. It's something that's working in the background that, like Amanda said, you put little effort into, that actually is building your reputation and helping you close people without you having to put a lot of effort into it. And it's continuing to build your brand as well, because it's something that you do anyway. And it's just, you're being more intentful with it. Another thing too is, if those people in that circle, and this is something I just made my client do, is, are they referred to you, or do you have a common person with them? Can you leverage that relationship in the cold leads? So for example, if I'm trying to close Amanda and Lizzie is our point of contact, common point of contact for us, I might reach out to Lizzie and say, hey, depending on my relationship with Lizzie, it might be as much as, hey, like, I really want to get Amanda as a client. I know I can help her. How can you help me? Or a bit more subtle, saying, hey, like, how do you know Amanda? Whatever. Like, it could be like in your face, and it could be subtle, but with the intention of seeing if Lizzie might help leverage her relationship. So she might give you some intel. She might nudge Amanda herself. Ideally, we want her to nudge Amanda and have the conversation versus just giving you the intel. I mean, that kind of drives me batshit crazy when I'm asking for referrals. I know this is a sidebar, but this just happened. I have to get off my chest. And I love it. But, I used to teach that there's different shades to a referral, and I ask for something specific and they just give me a number without telling the person that I'm going to reach out to them, without giving me any contacts. I just ask, here's something random. And I love this. So, and I know she listens to the podcast. So I love you for this. I asked for African snails. I know this is so random. And somebody reached out to me and gave me a number. And I was like, okay, but for the African snail. So at least I knew. And I'm like, okay, but how do you know them? Like, what do they do? Like, I'm going to email this person, and then they explained more about it. And so, but that's true. Like with the turning cold leads, like, can you have somebody leverage their relationship a little bit with that cold lead to help you along, to nudge them along, or to maybe even give you a little bit of intel without betraying the trust of that relationship?
Absolutely. I can totally see someone being like, here's random phone number. It's a very common thing, actually. Like, oh, I know so-and-so, zero context. Here's so-and-so's number. Are they a business? Are they like a private do they just have snails in their backyard? Like, what's the situation here? So it's actually pretty common in the referrals. But for those of you who have done a lot of networking, or if you've done like BNI, for example, you're very used to the more proper way to do referrals. But leveraging your people we talk about that all the time. How can you use someone else? How can you, that 1 degree of separation can really make the difference in edifying you as a client or as a service or whatever it is that you're selling. Just a little bit of one other person's edification can make absolutely 100% the difference in whether or not they become a client, and whether or not they buy your products or services. And that can turn somebody who's cold into a super hot lead.
Sometimes that nudge of like Lizzie checking in with Amanda and saying, hey, Amanda, like, did you ever move forward with Lynn? They might be able to actually get them to close. So that nudge or that push, either way, it's so undervalued, especially when it comes to cold leads. I think another thing too, Amanda, is that we talk a lot about selling, and we have courses, we have a book on sales, we have a whole year of sales podcasts. But I think especially with cold leads, it's switching from selling, like the selling verbiage, to helping them make a decision, like shit or get off the pot, close the loop. Like Amanda used before, 3 years later, they have the same problem. And it's kind of like saying, listen, either I'm the right fit or I'm not the right fit. And often too, I would ask that, especially when I was like in telemarketing, or I would say, is it a no for now or is it a no for good? If it was no for good, I'd still reach out to them unless they were absolutely batshit crazy, but a year later or so. So like really kind of when it's a cold lead, because you've already established, the solution, the problem, this, not maybe, if you have, and then like, how can I support you? And there are some times where I absolutely ask, what do you need from me to make this decision? Like, or what do you need to make this decision? Like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how important is it for you to have a change, right? So asking clarifying questions, including clarifying questions around making a decision, is super important.
The other thing I really want to talk about, and I say this from a cold lead memory. So back in the day when I was, smile and dialing, in the old days where it was like telemarketer, just as many calls as you can get in your shift. I will say the one thing that made all the difference is product conviction. If you do not believe in what you are selling to a cold outreach client or prospect, it is going to show. Believe in your business enough to be believable. I mean, I think of it from the perspective of years ago. I mean, not even from the telemarketing perspective, but when I for a while, I was going to go into real estate. I was offered a position and I just needed to get my license. And I was like, I don't want to sell this thing because I don't want them, I will preface this, I didn't want them to develop a beach in Hawaii. And I thought by me saying that I wasn't going to sell the condos, that would somehow prevent this beach from being developed. Obviously, I was delusional. However, and I could have made millions. However, I know that I couldn't sell those products because I didn't believe in the product. I didn't want timeshares to go there. And so no matter how well I was trained or, how well I passed my real estate license, I never would have been able to sell that product because I hated that it was being built. And so like, I'll think back and joke how I could have been a millionaire, but I absolutely wouldn't have been, because had I gone through the effort of getting my license and selling it, I would not have sold anything because I didn't want people to be there. And so having that lack of product conviction would have made me a shitty seller. And so when you're selling to when you're doing cold outreach, you have to believe that your solution is the solution to their problem, or you're going to be, speaking in deaf ears. It's never going to work out for you. You're never going to land that and create a warm lead or a sale if you don't believe in what you're selling. And if you don't honestly believe that the price you're charging is the accurate price to charge. And I see it all the time with, independent contractors working for small businesses. They don't believe that the prices are fair. And so when they're trying to sell, it always comes off that, it's maybe that person can't afford it, or maybe that's too expensive. And it's their own belief in that sabotages the sale before that person even has the opportunity to be nurtured. So believe in what you're selling.
That is such a good one. That is such a good one. All right. Listen, we've given you all kinds of nuggets of how to turn cold leads into potential sales, or at least get them off the decision. And one other thing I do want to leave here is that first, you should have a process. We talk about this. So you should know who your cold leads are, or who's in your pipeline. But if it's a no, take it out of your energy, because you don't need to be carrying the energy forward to say, Amanda might be a possibility. Lizzie might be. Okay. So deal with them, even if you put them in your calendar to follow up with in 6 months, whatever that is. But take them out of your energy, because that can clog the energy of moving forward with closing other ones. But we've given you lots and lots of nuggets. There's many more we could go through, but we want to know what's your favorite. And if we missed one that you really think should have been on this podcast, let us know. Maybe we'll do a training around this too. I love it.
Ultimately,
Actually,
don't be afraid of cold leads.
yes.
They're not
Don't-
so scary. They're not, I've actually had conversations around this with employees. Don't be afraid of them. They're not scary. They're just uninformed. They're just not nurtured. They haven't been invited to the party that you're throwing. So don't be afraid to invite them and, turn those cold leads into clients.
Absolutely. Go ahead and hit subscribe and make sure you share this podcast with somebody who needs a little bit of help in the turning cold leads into sales department or into decision making, regardless of what it is. Until next time,
Get after it.
thanks for tuning in. But remember, listening is not doing.
Take what you heard today and move.
Share the episode, leave us a review, and tag us when you take action.
Head over to the pursuitofbadasserie.com and see how we're helping entrepreneurs get results without the fluff.
Until next time.
Let's get after it.